Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to I Care About You, the podcast where we dive deep into topics that impact our mental and emotional well-being, as well as some things that are intertwined with how we might see ourselves in our relation to the universe. I'm your host, Juliana J., and today we're exploring something we all experience but wish we didn't, and that's worry. Why do we worry? What does it do to our health? How does it affect our daily lives? And most importantly, how can we worry less and find more contentment with life? Stick around because we'll unpack it all today. Before we dive in, let me remind you to like and subscribe, and please leave a comment if something comes up that you want to talk about, specific worries that you have. Sometimes just writing them down can help you release them for a time. And also, I wanted to remind you to check out my book, Reasons to Live. I'll put a link in the website. I'm really tongue-tied today. I'll put a link in the description for you, but it's also available on my website and basically anywhere you can buy books. So let's dive in. Let's start with the simple question of why do we worry? At its core, worry is a survival mechanism. Our brains have evolved to anticipate threats and dangers. Thousands of years ago, this was essential for survival. Imagine being a hunter-gatherer and needing to worry about predators, food shortages, shelter, all kinds of things like that. Worry helped early humans stay alert and prepared for the worst. Fast forward to today, most of us aren't dodging saber-toothed tigers anymore, but our brains haven't quite caught up. Instead, we worry about deadlines, relationships, finances, global events, politics, health, and so much more. Worry is rooted in fear of the unknown. I'm going to do other podcasts on fear because I think it's really worth a deep dive. But for now, we're talking about how fear relates to worry. Worry is rooted in the fear of the unknown, the fear of failure, the fear of loss, the fear of what people will think, the fear of how others will interpret what you're doing or who you are or how you feel. It's our brain's way of trying to regain control in situations that we feel are uncertain. And I want to make a note here that we can also worry about things that have already happened and create new consequences for those things. Like, say you have a conversation with somebody and then later on, you're overanalyzing it, the conversation, and making up new things to worry about. Like, did they take what I said the wrong way? Do I need to circle back? It just goes crazy in our brains. And a lot of us really get caught up in the net of worrying all the time. So here's the catch. A little bit of worry can be motivative. It can motivate us to take action. Chronic or excessive worry, however, doesn't solve problems. It just exhausts us and creates more problems that might not actually be a problem at all. Fabricated in your mind, like I was saying, when you analyze something that's already happened or about to happen, and you're worrying about the worst case scenario all the time. So how does worry affect our health and our daily lives? Well, you've probably experienced it and can talk about it a little bit yourself. If you have a comment on that, please leave it in the comments, or if you're watching this on another platform, you can message me through my website. I would love to hear your thoughts on what brings you worry. Now let's talk about how worry impacts us physically, mentally, and emotionally. So first, let's take our physical health. When we worry, our bodies respond as if there is an immediate danger. It activates that fight or flight response, releasing stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Over time, chronic worry can lead to high blood pressure, a weakened immune system, insomnia, and digestive issues. Now, I bet you have experienced one of those things through your worry or as a consequence of your worry. I know somebody that's a really chronic worrier and has probably been doing it all their life, and they kind of suffer from all those things. Now that they're older, it's really hard to switch gears for them. Mental health, let's talk about that. How does worry affect your mental health? Worry can feel like a broken record, replaying the same what if, I should have done this. Oh no, I think this is going to happen over and over and over. This mental loop leads to anxiety disorders, difficulty concentrating, decision-making paralysis. We've probably all experienced these. I have certainly experienced all of these before, and most of the things about our physical health. I don't have high blood pressure, but during my life, I've experienced many of these things. And you'll see some people who really have let worry get off balance. They're the people who might never make a decision on where to go for dinner, need very simple decision making things for them, like should I wear this jacket or this jacket? They have a lot of anxiety. They might do all kinds of anxiety sort of things like darting eyes or biting their nails or any kind of physical action you associate with worry. And in doing that, they're creating a physical problem as well. So it's kind of intertwined. How does it affect your daily life? Worry takes us out of the present moment. Instead of enjoying time with loved ones or friends or family or really working on something at work, we're stuck in our heads playing those loops of worry over and over again. It can strain our relationships as constant worrying may overcome our thoughts and how we interact with people. And so we're not being very good listeners when we're in our heads about worry. We have a hard time carrying conversations on when we're always worrying. We're always bringing the conversation back to a worry or a can't do or shouldn't do or why it can't be done. We tend to not have big dreams because, just keep your head down and move through life. And that can be a big strain on relationships. It can also sort of cultivate within a relationship a negativity or a distrust. You're in a relationship with somebody who over worries, they might constantly be sort of picking on you in a way about all the things you should be worrying about as well. And that can make you feel like you can't trust them or they don't respect you or they don't think of you as an equal. And it's really their worry, that worry trap that they're stuck in and they don't realize it. Does any of this sound familiar to you? It does to me. But if it does for you, don't worry, you're not alone. There are ways to manage this. And let's get into how we can break free from the worry trap. Before we do that, I want to just touch briefly on the different groups of folks out there and how worry affects people differently. Worry impacts us all in different ways from an individual perspective, but also in particular groups of folks. Let's take a moment to explore how worry affects us at different stages in life and with different communities. While worry is universal, its impact is shaped by unique circumstances, environments, and challenges, and with their context. So let's talk about children and teenagers. What's their worry landscape? Worries in children often stem from fear of the unknown, school, relationships, family dynamics. Let's face it, kids don't have a lot of power in their lives. Most often, somebody's telling them how to dress, when to go to sleep, what to watch, what to do on a daily basis, what sports they're going to play, et cetera, et cetera. And just being in that space of not knowing creates a lot of fear of the unknown. What's going to happen next? And if you're a child growing up in an environment that isn't predictable, you can magnify that quite heavily because they don't know from one minute to the next what's going to happen. Teenagers worry about fitting in, academic performance, social media pressures in the future. This becomes so all-consuming when people get to high school and they feel the pressures of what other people are doing, what they should be doing, the future, what's going to happen after high school. Did I do enough extracurriculars to get into college? If I'm not getting into college, what's the next move there? Where do I go? How do I fit in with all the different groups there are? Where do I find my place? And that can really be heightened if you're someone who isn't fitting in to the cis normative. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So, what is the impact? Chronic worry in young people can manifest as trouble concentrating, difficulty sleeping, even physical symptoms like stomach aches and headaches. It can lead to migraines. And these are all true in adults as well, right? You can have difficulty sleeping, physical symptoms like stomach aches and headaches, migraines. It can affect your muscle coordination. It can affect your ability to get up and be active and move forward in your life. It can affect all types of things like your ability to carry on conversations, you name it. High stress during the developmental years might affect self-esteem and learning. I definitely think that is true. If you're in a state of worry, in a worry trap or a worry loop, and that's your state of being, you're not spending a lot of time concentrating on what's happening in a classroom or literally anywhere else. And you're in a constant state of fight or flight. You just keep reactivating your body to be ready to run all the time. And that is not a space where thoughtful, deep thinking can occur. That is a space where you need to make immediate decisions and act on them. And so you're kind of a little bit more impulsive than you might be. And it's a little bit harder to be out in the world and enjoy where you are. Perhaps you're at a gathering or a party or something like that, and the constant worry is clouding your ability to have a good time. Schools can support mental well-being by fostering safe spaces and providing access to counselors, but as we know, many times schools are overburdened with so much else that the counselors are either understaffed or they are so controlled that it's hard for them to really help people when they need it. And sometimes kids can't even get into a counselor for weeks. And that is also a problem when the moment is now. So then there's young adults. What is their worry landscape like? This group may face concerns about career choices, financial stability, relationships, societal expectations, which again is for all adults. We can all find ourselves there. It can also be social media comparison amplifies that self-doubt and anxiety. So young adults, they're trying to figure out life, and our culture expects them to have it all figured out by the time they hit college. I mean, you have to pick your major that you're going to stay in for the rest of your life. And a lot of people like me, I came from a small town, and it was hard to pick a major because there was so much I didn't know about. And college is for exploration. And I was fortunate enough to go to college during the time when that was a little bit looser. Now it's very tight. You have to pick your major right away. And a lot of times that is so challenging. Young adults need space to figure out who they are, what they want to do, what their passions are, where they're going to go next. And they also need the flexibility that if they start to walk down a particular road in life and they decide that's not for them, they can choose another path or another direction or another career or whatever it is. Young adults also worry about relationships, being alone, living in an apartment alone, living with a bunch of people in an apartment and not fitting in, finding a partner, et cetera, et cetera. The impact is that this worry phase can lead to burnout, decision paralysis, we talked about earlier, unhealthy coping mechanisms like avoidance or substance use. We've all seen that. The coping strategies are practicing self-compassion and focusing on incremental progress rather than perfection, and realizing that life is up and down. It's not a trajectory that goes straight from I got out of school and I just progressed and got all these things. And now I live in this fancy house with 2.5 kids and a lovely partner, and I have a great job where I'm the boss. That's a fairy tale we get told in a lot. That isn't true. Life is ups and downs, and you have to be able to roll with it when it's happening and realize that sometimes the downs are really a door to something amazing or something you should be doing. But we don't give ourselves that space to do that. And if we're in positions or jobs that don't fulfill us, we can lead to burnout just trying to be better, be noticed, be seen. And there's a lot of pressure. The work culture is very broken. I've talked about this a lot on a different podcasts. It's broken, and we need to find ways to bring it back to a space that's doable. Another thing that you can do is set boundaries with social media and dedicate times to hobbies and self-care rather than looking at what everybody else is doing. We all know that everything on social media is a grain of salt because it's fabricated. It's not every moment of that person's life. No one's taking a picture of them crying on the bathroom floor in the fetal position, talking about how they feel deeply inside. Although perhaps if more people did that, we'd be a little healthier society. I mean, genuinely, not for show. But even that, somebody pours their heart out on social media, we're skeptical sometimes. And that's a tangent, but limiting yourself to social media, even though you realize in your mind it's a bit fabricated, sometimes that just doesn't hit. And you're thinking, oh, I should be hitting these milestones in life, and I'm not, like all my friends are. Another category that can really suffer with worry, obviously, is parents and caregivers. And what does their worry landscape look like? Common worries include financial stability, your children's well-being, a balanced work and family life. What are your children's future? Your children's everything, basically, everything. Caregivers of aging parents face additional stresses from medical and emotional responsibilities, dealing with death, which is really hard for our society. We don't have a mechanism for dealing with end of life. And that is really hard. And I mean, we have mechanisms, but we don't have this overarching mechanism for all of us so that we can feel a little bit more at peace with end of life. It's end of life very, very hard. That's an exceptional high stress place to be in when you're taking care of elderly folks or aging parents or people with chronic disease. It's really hard mentally, emotionally, and physically, and way too much to get in here, but just produces so much worry. So, what's the impact of that? Prolonged worry can lead to caregiver burnout, resentment, neglecting personal needs. You can start neglecting the people that you're caring for. The mental load of managing multiple responsibilities can result in fatigue, decreased productivity, depression, all kinds of emotional and mental loops you can get into. Anxiety is a big one. It just can lead to this breakdown of the caregiver, both physically and mentally and emotionally. I shouldn't say both, all physically, mentally, and emotionally. All those things really play in to caregiver burnout. So, what are some coping strategies? Delegating tasks, seeking community support, and prioritizing self-care can reduce the burden. But let's be real, caregiving someone is a huge act of love and a huge act of kindness. And in taking on that, it's sometimes hard to delegate tasks or seek support because you're so deep in it. Seeking support in itself is a burden. And you worry that things won't be done just so. If you're taking care of somebody who has dementia or something like that, there's a whole nother level going on there where that's really, really challenging. You can also seek therapy or support groups tailored to caregivers to provide a safe outlet for sharing your challenges. Sometimes just sharing your challenges is so important. If you can't find a group in your community, you can go online, or you can find someone, you'll come across them in your travels who's doing kind of the same thing as you, and perhaps you can find camaraderie there. It's really easy to do that when your kids are in school because you'll naturally be interacting with other parents. Then there's older adults. What's their worry landscape? Concerns about health, loss of independence, financial security, loneliness. Those things often dominate the stage. There's also, if they have a partner, there's all those things regarding the partner. Facing unknown aging or loss of loved ones adds to the emotional weight. Also, just worrying about their health, their safety, their mental faculties, all those things. And then there is the big unknown, as we talked about earlier, death and end of life. What is the impact? Worry can compound physical health issues like cardiovascular problems or contribute to mental health concerns like depression. A lot of older folks, everybody really, I was in a really bad worry loop years ago where I would just at night go over every single thing I said that day and worry about single thing that I did and said. And then that would bring on worries from past years, even all the way back to childhood, things I did wrong. And just that giant worry loop can really become profound when you're older because you have a little bit more time to devote to it. And you might. So, what are some coping strategies? Mindfulness practices are really good for all these folks, everyone who suffers from excessive worry. Maintaining strong social connections can foster resilience. Seeking meaningful work or hobbies. And when I work, I'm saying like volunteer work or something that you do that's meaningful to you, or spiritual practices can also really, really help. And shift the focus away from fears and more on the now, because worry is about something that's going to happen in the future. Worry isn't about this moment right here. It's about the future. So if you can bring in a more of a mindfulness way of looking at the world, you're looking at the world right now in this moment and not tomorrow or 4 hours from now or 3 weeks from now or 3 years from now. Another group I really want to bring up that worry can be really hard is marginalized communities. What does that worry landscape look like? Systematic inequities, can lead to unique stressors such as concerns about safety, discrimination, lack of access to resources. This is a huge thing right now in the United States with an election that just happened. Folks are worried about their rights, about discrimination, about hatred, about hate crimes, about lack of resources, about having freedoms that they do have taken away, about having rights revoked. That they've sort of seen a little bit of that already with what's happening with trans students across the country and things like that. And it promotes so much more worry. The LGBTQIA2S plus individuals may worry about acceptance, visibility, navigating the system, and dealing with a system and a community and a country that may not affirm their identities. They worry about the rollback. What rights will be taken away? They worry about their communities. They worry about people that will go underground. They worry about so many things that it's almost unbearable at times. And so what is the impact? Worry in these communities can lead to heightened anxiety, hypervigilance, or feelings of isolation. It can lead to a lot of anger and other emotions. Limited access to healthcare exacerbates mental and health issues and disparities. And I can't really speak to BIPOC groups, but I want to make sure that we are all aware that those folks are also dealing with different stressors and different worries in the same way. What kind of coping strategies are there? Community-based programs and affirming spaces that foster support and resilience, advocating for systematic change when possible while cultivating personal coping skills and grounding techniques. All the techniques we talked about, as I've said before, are good for all these groups. But in particular, this group might find some solace in advocating or working on what they want to change in some way. That might be helpful to find a group of like-minded folks who are concerned about the same issues as you are, who wants to make a change, and you can get involved and feel like, although it's hard, you're doing your part. Sometimes that's very powerful. So I want to switch gears now that we talked about the impact of worry. And I want to talk about what we can do to worry less and go a little bit more into detail, although we mentioned some things earlier. So let's talk solutions. How can we stop worry from running the show? We can practice awareness. That's the mindfulness I talked about. The first step to managing worry is recognizing it. Start by asking yourself, what am I worried about right now? Is this something I can control? Is my worry productive or not? By becoming aware of your worry patterns, you can start to break the cycle. So what I did was kept a worry journal for a little bit. And every time there was a worry, I wrote it down. And I realized I had these certain things I was over concerned about. And I had this certain time of day I would do most of my worrying and the impacts of that. And could I really control what I was worrying about? And was it productive to worry, or was it better to take action? And if I took action, what was that action? As I said, writing it down in your worry journal. Write down everything you're worried about and then ask yourself, what is the worst case scenario? What are you worried about? How likely is that to happen? What small steps can you take to address it? So this is all about identifying your worry, understanding the true impact of the worry, and then doing something about it. That is really, really powerful to not just sit in your worry of, well, the world's like all against me, because that really plays into your self-definition, that you're alone, the world's against you, nobody likes you, you're unloved, you're not worthy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Worry can do a lot of things for your internal dialogue and internal beliefs and self-beliefs. So being proactive can kind of counterbalance that a little bit. Focus on the present, another mindful technique. Most worries are about the future and what might happen. Practicing mindfulness can help you stay grounded in the now, in the moment. Here's a quick exercise. Take a breath in for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, and exhale for 4 counts. And do that for about 3 to 5 minutes. As you breathe, just kind of look around and notice your environment through all your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? And just take a moment to be inside your own body. I talk about breathing techniques a lot. There's a lot out there, and there's a lot that can really help you if you start to get in this worry circle. Mindfulness isn't about ignoring the world. It's about giving your mind a break. It's not to ignore your worries. It's just to take a moment to not address them or think about them. Limit yourself to your what ifs questions and your what if scenarios. Instead of spiraling into a million what ifs, ask yourself, what's the most likely outcome? What evidence do I have that this will even happen? Changing your thoughts can help you separate fact from fear. And that's really what you're doing here. A lot of times your what ifs will get really crazy, and it's so unlikely. So keep it grounded in the reality of the situation. And the big thing I already talked about, take action where you can. Taking action can really help dissolve the worry. Some worries require action, and that's great. Create a plan to tackle what's within your control and learn to let go of what isn't. If you're worried about finances, set a budget. If you're worried about a relationship, have an honest conversation. And of course, sometimes things like finances do feel very much out of your control, and you do feel like you can't do anything about it. But there's always something. If you look deep, don't just disregard it immediately, like I'm going to be struggling forever, and that's just who I am as a person, and there's no way out of this. There's always something you can do, however small, to build on the goal. A lot of people will go straight to this really lofty goal. Oh, I'm financially insecure, so my goal is to make $1 million in the next 6 months. Break that down with some mini goals in between. I'm going to work on my resume. I'm going to work on my cover letter. I'm going to seek advice about my resume and cover letter. I'm going to get some references. I'm going to look at jobs, etc. A plan in place can take away a lot of that worry. Otherwise, you're just worrying about the unknown all the time. But if you have a plan, you can start checking off the boxes. Here's an important one. Create a worry-free zone. 10 to 15 minutes a day as your designated worry time. And during that time, you can think about and write down all your worries. You can obsess about them. Just go wild with your worries. But once that time is up, let them go and focus on the rest of your day. So give yourself some space to worry, but cap it. I only worry now for this amount of time, and then I move on. I strategize. And as always, engage in self-care. Self-care isn't selfish, it's essential. I talk about how I did a podcast very early on about self-care and I didn't understand it. And I leave that up to remind me how far I've come, actually, because self-care is very essential. Take time to do things that bring you joy and relaxation, whether it's exercise, reading, spending time in nature, even doing small things like painting your nails or doing some window shopping or getting yourself a fancy coffee drink or lighting a candle. I'm trying to think of all the things that I do, just small, even if it's just taking 5 minutes just by yourself to center and ground. It's good to have self-care rituals and habits that you do. And lastly, seek support. Sometimes worry feels too big to handle alone, and taking it to a trusted friend or a family member, a therapist or a healer can provide perspective and relief. Coaches are really helpful in this realm because they help you create a game plan for your next moves. And remember, it's okay to ask for help. You're not meant to carry on every burden alone. I want to talk finally about finding contentment. So now you have these strategies. You realize how worry shows up in your life and what it can do to your life. And if you are in a particular group where worry might be a bit more specific, do you resonate with that? Do you not? You know what it's doing to your body and your mental health, and you have some strategies. But how can you find contentment? Let's focus on that for a second. Contentment doesn't mean you'll never worry again. It means learning to coexist with worry without letting it control you. So you're finding balance here. It's not that you stop worrying and every time a worry comes in, you discount it and you don't think about it again. I mean, honestly, I do that a lot. A worry will come in and I will decide that's just ridiculous. I can't do anything about that. Or it will be, oh, this is a worry I can easily fix. I'm just going to call up the person and apologize or talk about something or whatever it may be. Or I'm worried I forgot to turn off the stove. I'm going to go turn off the stove. You can find mechanisms for it. And some worry is important and necessary. You don't have to let it rule your day anymore. It doesn't have to control you. It just means that you're coexisting with the worry. You're creating habits. And these are habits, so you have to stick with it, right? Like all these things we talked about you can do. You don't just do it once and then go, oh, it didn't work, and move on. You have to work with them for a period of time, like maybe it's a month or 2 months or 3 months, to really see that change. Because as I've talked about before, your brain likes to be in these well-worn grooves that you have. And if worry is your go-to, your brain's going to go there every time. And you have to give it a new path. You have to start making a new groove in the thought process so that you go there instead of the old path of worrying. You're now going to give it 10 minutes, come up with a solution and fix it, or let it go. Whatever mechanism you decide to use, you need to give some time and energy into changing those old ways of being. And it will work, believe me. I was extremely worrisome. I spent the majority of my time worrying. Any spare moment I had, I was worrying. 3 a.m. I was worrying for hours. In my dreams, I was worrying. And I'm able to have very few worries now. Something big will come up and I will take action. And then other things, I just really try to let go. So I am proof that you can change the cycle for yourself and live a much happier, joyful life, because worry consumes your joy. Here's a parting thought for you. Contentment comes from accepting what you can't control, taking action when you can, and finding gratitude for the present moment. Gratitude is huge. If you concentrate on things that are going well, that will become what you think about and less about what is not going well. Gratitude is a huge, huge part of balancing your worry. Try the simple gratitude exercise. Before bed, write down 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be big. Maybe it's you got a cute text from a friend, or you had a cup of great tea today, or there was a moment of laughter, or your bed is cozy. I do this every night, and you don't just write one word. If that's all you have time for, you can write one word. It can be got home early, or sometimes I write down people's names or my dog's name. But you can also write down things like, I am grateful for this nice cozy bed because otherwise I would be cold, and I love this blanket and it's very cozy and it makes me feel like I'm protected and cared for and it's a safe place. You can really elaborate what you're thankful for, and that will really be incredible and profoundly change your life in other ways, not just about worry. But over time, gratitude can shift your focus from what's wrong in your life and what's not going well to all the abundance that you have. So thank you all, my dear friends, for spending time with me today. And remember, worry is part of life, but it doesn't have to run your life. With awareness, action, self-compassion, and understanding and gratitude, you can worry less and live more. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody who might need it. And don't forget to subscribe to I Care About You for more conversations on living meaningful and balanced life. And for now, know that I love you and I support you. I care about you, and you got this. So take good care, my friends.